If you're too poor to buy a joystick to play DCS, or the more casual options are not for you, then make a Roblox account and search for Strafe on Roblox. It's a military aviation game with a lot of mid to high fidelity aircraft for a game made in 2025. This game makes a barrier to entry for flying high fidelity jets, meaning a lot of clickable buttons, cheaper. Well, you probably need a decent computer, but I don't know how well it works on potato laptops. And since it resembles the real-life aircraft, it takes a bit to learn the basics of starting up and flying and knowing how the systems work. And by a bit, I mean a lot. For someone who's used to War Thunder or otherwise unfamiliar with flight simulators, it would be a shock. Now, jets are a lot faster to start than airliners, but each aircraft has its own manual worth hundreds of pages covering every feature that the aircraft could do. Thankfully, in this game, it is made simpler. You just need to learn how to start the plane up and work the weapons. You don't need to learn all the complicated navigation stuff, as you won't be flying that far from the main island, since Roblox breaks down the further you go. Let's use the F-16 for demonstration. First, you need to know how to cold start, which means starting up the plane with all of its systems, batteries, and engines dead. Turn on the battery, click a few switches here and here, click on the throttle, and you can fly. But you also need to arm your aircraft so you can fire your weapons, and to fool missiles, you must first turn on your flares and chaff to be able to fire them. Not only that, but you also need to align your HMCS by pressing a series of buttons. After arming your weapons, press the AA button here and press 4 to switch to air-to-air mode. Numbers on your keyboard switch the modes of the HUD, which range from navigational stuff to air-to-air and air-to-ground. Well, that was pretty complicated. I haven't even covered how to navigate yet, but that's the basic F-16 startup. It's pretty hard for a beginner to learn to start a plane, mostly because of finding that specific button that the tutorial told you to press. The MiG-29 is the simplest to start in this game. I chose this aircraft to be the second plane that I have picked up because it was so easy to learn that you don't even need to learn it. The instruments are designed very neatly and compactly, so all you had to do was flip all the switches on a panel and do the same for the other panel, then the radar and HUD, and finally the start button. For some reason, the handles that flipped all the necessary switches, making the process even quicker, aren't clickable here in Strafe. I kind of remember the handle being clickable. For the other aircraft, the startup procedure could vary from MiG-29 levels of complexity to F-18 Hornet levels of complexity. But starting the plane isn't the hard part, it's the flying. Try not to use missiles to kill and instead attempt a gun kill. Guaranteed you wouldn't be able to kill because you'd have to lead the target so the bullets land, even with a pipper, let alone landing. I'm not qualified enough to say that the flying here is realistic, only that the weight, or how sluggish or fast it moves, varies with the aircraft, but for Roblox players it would be a whole new experience. As for the combat itself, it's pretty fun. Learning to fire missiles is still a bit of work, especially for radar missiles, whereas slowing the cursor is a bit of a hassle with the current keybinds. Finally, locking, firing, and successfully killing a target is pretty satisfying. However, I think that the game poorly guides you through the game. The in-game tutorials are only enough to get your jet flying, but not ready for combat. The pictures in the tutorials are very hard to read, as finding the correct switch in the cockpit from the picture alone is a bit hard. Not only that, in a few cases, it doesn't tell you how to do certain things, which makes it annoying, like closing the canopy, the parking brake, the nose wheel lock, etc. Especially the canopy. Imagine just blindly following instructions on starting your jet and it inconveniently tells you where the canopy is 12 pages ago, so now your ears are blasted. I don't know the reason why the tutorials in the handbook don't cover everything. There could be sections to go to so you don't need to click something 36 times to learn about the HUDs, for example. The annoying things only get worse. Since you were forced to consult a manual from the game's Discord server, the picture of the switches, for some reason, have everything other than the mentioned switch cropped out almost all the time. How can a random civilian be able to instantly locate where this button is? It's completely bollocks and you know it. Maybe you can use the cockpit familiarization pictures in the handbook and use them with the manual, but still tedious. Anyway, people don't seem to bother reading the manual on the aircraft that they're learning. Since they've already looked at the handbook, it is partly their fault for not bothering to look into the documents and instead ask questions that can be answered by the manuals, which forces Cheeseburger, the developer, to answer these obvious questions all day long. Inevitably, people like these would always exist. The contents of the manual should be in game. The target audience, I assume, would be Roblox players. Most of them are not keen on wiki games, let alone reading a DCS Lite manual in another tab. Some aircraft have switches way back that you can't interact with or even see, so you need to press right control to set the camera back enough to cover the whole cockpit. The problem is that in the handbook, that wasn't mentioned. When banking, whenever you move your head up and down, it moves diagonally instead of going down. The same applies when moving up. Slewing the radar cursor is an absolute pain. It would be better if, say, you could use the middle mouse button, which is the scroll wheel button, to toggle the mouse from flying the aircraft to slew control, like left control, which switches the mouse button from flying to being able to use the instruments in the cockpit without banking your aircraft along the way. Well, that's all I have to say for the game. I recommend you try it out and put in a bit of an effort to start a plane and learn how to use the weapons. Despite it being a hassle to learn, it would still be satisfying to finally get the basics of using a jet right. I'd rate this around 6.5 out of 10.